Are you a technology company trying to break into a technology-adverse industry like the advanced nuclear reactor industry? My name is Sarah Gibboney. I am the president of Gibboney Nuclear PLLC. I am a registered professional engineer in the states of Virginia and Washington State. I have over 15 years of work experience. I've been working in the nuclear industry in the areas of core design at a light water reactor or an LWR. I worked in construction, I worked in transportation of radioactive materials, and I have worked in advanced reactor licensing for both the ARDP awardees. I've also worked at an operating power plant. So I am what you would call an industry insider. I would like to help you set realistic goals for what can be accomplished with technology in the nuclear industry. I'd like to cover 3 topics today. What is the nuclear licensing process? What does the NRC or Nuclear Regulatory Commission do? And why does advanced reactor design and construction cost so much?
First of all, what is the nuclear licensing process? We're going to start with the rules, and then we're going to move into what your licensing engineers within your organization should be doing to meet those rules. Nuclear licensing is the process that a designer or developer undergoes to ask for approval from the government regulator, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in this case, to construct and operate a nuclear power plant in the U.S. The Code of Federal Regulations is a collection of rules and policies that govern the United States. It's created by federal agencies and executive departments. The CFR is organized in titles and parts. Title 10 is for energy. As you can see here on the nrc.gov website, they are broken down into parts. If you go to Part 1, you will see the authority that's granted to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, when it was established, by whom. So the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is governed by 5 members that are called commissioners, and we'll get into that later. Title 10, Part 1, is the part that vests the power with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to regulate the nuclear industry, including advanced reactors. We'll go through some of the parts now. So Part 20 is your standard for protection against radiation, any kind of ionizing radiation. There are regulatory limits that your design must comply with. This is for the health and safety of the public. Public includes the workers at the power plants. So other parts that are governed by the regulator, the NRC, is Part 30, Rules for General Applicability to Domestic Licensing of Byproduct Material. This is for fusion reactors. The most widespread is Part 50. This is what the existing light water reactor fleet was licensed under. It's a 2-part licensing process. Part 1 being a construction permit application, and Part 2 being an operating license application. Both are separately reviewed and approved by the NRC. NRC indicates their approval by issuing a safety evaluation. So Part 52 has licenses, certifications, and approvals for nuclear power plants. This was the operating license application that Vogel 3 and 4 was licensed under. They just had one application instead of a 2-part process like you would find in Part 50. Part 53 is currently under construction. This is specifically created for microreactors. However, that rulemaking has not yet concluded, and it is not yet available for use by the industry. Other parts of interest is Part 71, Packaging and Transportation of Radioactive Materials. This is for any kind of radioactive material, including source terms, X-ray machines at hospitals, any kind of cobalt-60 source used in food processing. That would fall under Part 71 to get it to those manufacturing facilities. Part 72 is for the independent storage of spent nuclear fuel. This is sometimes referred to as ISFICs, so independent spent fuel storage. So how these are organized, we'll go into Part 50 here. So you'll see that the Part 50 is split into subparts. And so each of these have different information. So As you can see, it's not that intuitive about how this is organized. And walk through here is you start with lowercase a, lowercase b, and then this is not indented, which would be helpful, but it's not. You then can indent by a number 1. And then next to that is lowercase I, so lowercase Roman numerals. And then you would go into uppercase A, B, C. So you can get pretty nested, but that is the general organization of these subparts. Let's go to 10 CFR 5034. This is the contents of applications. This is one of the most important parts. Part A here, lowercase a, is what is in your preliminary safety analysis report for a new reactor design. And then you can scroll down and you can get to part little b, which is your final safety analysis report. So the way that this reads is that all this stuff is going to have to be covered in your preliminary safety analysis report. This is also called your PSAR. And so your PSAR is one part of your construction permit application that you send to the NRC. If we look at some of the content of 10 CFR 5034, you'll notice that it is mostly in legal speak. So it's general statements such as in this particular section for a preliminary plan for the applicant's organization, training of personnel, and conduct of operations. This is very general, and this is pretty common within the Code of Federal Regulations. The Code of Federal Regulations is the law that you have to comply with. However, applicants aren't just unleashed on the CFRs. We do have additional items that have been approved or endorsed by the NRC, such as the regulatory guides. Regulatory guides, interim staff guidance, and some NUREGs give guidance to the designers. They're not required, however. And so the NRC has a list of their regulatory guides that they have endorsed that would, if you're an applicant and you comply with the regulatory guides, then you are thereby complying with the Code of Federal Regulations. So let's open up one of these regulatory guides. This is continuing with some information about shielding. So this is Regulatory Guide 1.69. This is approved by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for use. It is describing a method that is acceptable to the NRC staff. So this is all public, so though this is going to be used by the regulatory staff, it is available for applicants to know what the regulatory staff is looking for. And it says that if you are trying to comply with Title 10, Section 20.1201, Occupational Dose Limits for Adult of the Code of Federal Regulations, and you follow what is in this regulatory guide, then you will be found compliant with the Code of Federal Regulations. Sounds simple enough. So there's additional aids that the NRC has issued, such as the NUREGs. NUREGs are either created by the NRC staff or they are created for the NRC staff by contractors. It's how you get certain things like the NUREG CR 7108. This means it was made by a contractor to the regulator. There's also, I believe, a BR. So these are tools that have been created by the regulator to aid applicants to complying with the Code of Federal Regulations by giving them an endorsed path. In addition to the NUREGs, we also have the SECIs. These are SECI papers that are written papers to the NRC staff between the staff and the commissioners, the 5 commissioners, that inform them about policy, rulemaking, and other matters. This is all publicly available, so if you're an applicant, you can keep up with how your regulatory body is thinking. After that's background, let's get into what the NRC is doing specifically for advanced reactors. Here on the nrc.gov website, they have a special page set up with a lot of the frequently asked questions that they have decided to answer after interacting with a couple applicants. It's very good information. One of them is the NRC is an independent regulator. This means that the NRC is not a consulting organization. Myself, with Gibboney Nuclear, I am a consulting organization. The NRC is not going to pass judgment on your design until you make a formal application. They do not give out advice to applicants on how to better comply. Everything that they have provided, I've actually reviewed earlier in this video. So it is up to individual applicants to ask whether a design component or design specific method meets the regulations. You can interact with the regulator in public meetings or submitting white papers for review. White papers are very useful. They are a documented report. However, the NRC will not issue a safety evaluation on a white paper. The licensing paper that the NRC will issue safety evaluations on are your topical reports, your technical reports, and your safety analysis reports themselves. After submittal of your construction permit application, which consists of your preliminary safety analysis report, any topical or technical reports, your environmental report, your tech specs, that whole package is your construction permit application. After submittal, you're going to receive requests for additional information from the NRC to answer further questions that they may have. All of this is going to be recorded in your docket as an applicant. When you are submitting your second half as part of a Part 50 application, that was your operating license application. Now this one is going to include your uncertainties on your analysis methods, your margin, your core operating limits report, your pressure temperature limits report, and any set points that you would have in your power plant. So the fee structure, none of this is actually paid for by the US government. In 2019, it requires that the NRC recover essentially 100% of its budget through fees charged to NRC applicants, even advanced reactor applicants, and license holders. So that's your existing power plants. The NRC is funded by the industry applicants. We have every staff hour is allocated to review of a particular scope of information provided by an applicant to support an application for construction or operation. And then you are billed as a licensee or potential licensee for that. Their current price is $317 an hour. However, for fiscal, and it's actually is getting more, but for the advanced reactor applicants and license holders, so this is everybody who is now approaching the NRC, they are giving a reduced billing rate of $146 per NRC staff hour. That's a nice break, but it's still pretty expensive. All right, so now what does the NRC do? The NRC reviews applications to ensure that they comply with all of 10 CFR 50. If you're applying under 10 CFR 52, they're checking so that you're complying with 10 CFR 52. The commission is headed by 5 commissioners appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate for 5-year terms. These are all political appointees. One of them is designated by the president to be the chairman and the official spokesperson of the commission. The current commissioners are Chairman David A. Wright, Commissioner Annie Caputo, Commissioner Christopher T. Hansen, Commissioner Bradley R. Cromwell, and Commissioner Matthew J. Mazzano. The SECI papers that are available on nrc.gov are the official correspondence between the commissioners and the NRC staff. That is how it is made public, how the commissioners are instructing the staff to execute their directives. When the NRC reviews applications to ensure they all comply with 10 CFR 50. This means that for advanced reactors that may have unique methodologies that aren't endorsed by regulatory guides or NUREGs, which we reviewed earlier as a shortcut to CFR compliance, it means that you will need to seek special endorsement by the NRC. You do this by engaging in pre-application submittals. Let's say you have a unique approach for shielding, like this one. Let's say you're not able to follow Regulatory Guide 1.69. So you'd have your licensing engineer present your new methodology to the NRC and explain why it's just as safe, read conservative, as the endorsed methodology. This helps the regulator organize itself to make available the staff to review your incoming topical report. Topical report is the formal asking of the NRC to give you a safety evaluation on your novel approach. Your licensing engineer would have to write the topical report, submit it to the NRC for review. The NRC then gives you a timeline. I personally have seen a year to 18 months to issue a safety evaluation report, which would formally accept or deny your novel approach. Ideally, if they were going to deny it, they would give you a heads up in the public meeting. The more novel the approach is, the more review time the applicant will have with the regulator. So this gets us to the multi-billion-dollar question of why does advanced reactor design and construction cost so much? I'm figuring most of the people watching this video are familiar with Vogtle 3 and 4, which ended up costing over $35 billion. They built two AP1000 reactors, and it was a design that was marketed to be modular and less expensive. Vogtle 3 and 4 was licensed under 10 CFR 52, which is a combined operating license application, meaning they were only seeking one safety evaluation report from the NRC instead of the 10 CFR 52 part, one for your construction permit application, one for your operating license application. So why was Vogtle 3 and 4 so much more expensive? Well, we just covered how when you have novel approaches, that the NRC needs to spend additional time reviewing your approach. And we also pointed out that the NRC fees are not cheap. They're $317 an hour. And so when you want to discourage an applicant from applying, the regulator can continue to ask more and more questions until you run out of money. Now, we also reviewed how the Commission instructs the staff to follow their directives. For about 8 years, the NRC Commission was headed by Gregory Jacosi as chairman. After he finished 8 years, his true colors showed, as he was very much against opening new power plants. That's why we've only had Vogtle 3 and 4 units this century being approved for construction. So the conclusion I'm drawing is that with the reduced fee structure for advanced reactors and an NRC commission truly focused on safety, and that's not attempting to drive applicants into bankruptcy, I am cautiously optimistic that advanced nuclear power might have a chance to be built in the U.S. Now, about applicants and their money. The NRC doesn't care about how much something costs as long as it is safe. So when Vogtle 3 and 4 was under construction, it drove into bankruptcy the designer, Westinghouse, and 3 nuclear construction companies. So it's a very harrowing endeavor for any large corporation to undertake. And we've had a couple entities be made an example of by the regulator's approach. Now, for advanced reactors, you still have to comply with 10 CFR 50 and seek regulatory approval for novel methodologies. So you will have more topical reports and more regulatory review hours than a historically large LWR, or light water reactor. However, a note about safety. The existing fleet is safely operating under 10 CFR 50. And if you comply with 10 CFR 50, you should be safely operating as well. And that should be enough. That's also my opinion. Ultimately, the regulator would be the one making that decision. In conclusion, I just want to say the purpose of the NRC is to protect the health and safety of the public. My next video will be about giving the NRC what they need to verify the safety of your designs in the most cost-effective way. Feel free to leave comments if you want another topic presented. I know there are many. I'm recently a new licensing consulting business, so I make my money on one-on-one consultations with potential applicants or technology providers. Check out my website, www.gibboneynuclear.com, to see my full offerings. I will leave a link in the description below. Also, please like and subscribe. I'm hoping to put out new free content every week to help the advanced reactor community.